Welcome to Mission Oriented, a veteran crowd podcast that showcases veteran talent from both the private and public sectors. Their impact is everywhere. We are here to uncover it. Here's your host, Bob Louthen.
Welcome, everybody. This is Bob Louthen, host of the Mission Oriented podcast on the Veteran Crowd Network. My guest today, Erik DeGiorgi, founder and CEO of NetSpeek. He's up in the Boston area, a Marine, veteran of Afghanistan. I'm going to talk about being an honor guard at the White House. I'm kind of curious about that one, Erik. Erik,
Sure.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for being on the Mission Oriented podcast.
Thanks, Bob, for having me. Pleasure.
It's Erik and I met through the accelerator at the Founder Institute a few months ago. We kind of struck up a friendship. We were in sort of a study group together, and it's been fun to get to know each other. Erik, you got a very interesting business getting ready to have a significant launch. But before we do that, I always like to talk first about how you got into the military. You became a Marine. Is there a story behind that?
It's almost kind of a quintessential kind of all-American story. Just growing up, always felt compelled. Grew up, a lot of people in the family were in the military in different stages, and it was always a point of pride for different people, and was really a decision I made very early on, like 12, 13. I remember being a freshman in high school and going up to the recruiting table when the Marines would come in and set up in the lobby, and I remember the first time basically like, "Oh, that's good, kid. Come back in a couple of years. We can't do anything until you're older." But it was always a kind of not even a decision. It was just a path that I thought I was going to take, and timing was interesting. I joined and I enlisted and left for recruit training in the summer of 2001.
Good timing, really good timing.
Yeah, I was, actually in recruit training during 9/11, which is, probably a podcast in and of itself. Quite an odd experience.
Were you Parris Island or Hollywood?
Oh, Parris Island.
Parris Island, okay.
Yeah. So I'm born and
in the
raised
summer, got the sand fleas, or good.
Yeah. And so it was, it was an interesting time, but and wound up being a very formative experience, as you can imagine, over the course being an infantryman from 2001 to 2005. It was quite formative.
Did you go to Afghanistan before or after you were assigned as honor guard at the White House?
I was after. So I was selected for the honor guard. They actually do that in recruit training. They do a screening there. And basically, if you can, if you're around 6 feet, have a decent complexion, can read and write, and stand still, they'll snatch you up and send you down there to DC. So I did that. I went right there after. So I went to school infantry after recruit training, and then down to my first duty station at 8th and I, and was there for about 18 months. And duty there was largely any ceremony that required, not only just Marines, but joint service. We did mostly a lot of joint service stuff. So anything we did a lot of work at the Pentagon, greeting people when they would come in, dignitary and things like that, opening doors for people pulling up to, the White House and things like that. We did a weekly tattoo or parade at the barracks.
Was that a Friday evening retreat
kind
of thing? Yeah.
Yep, that's exactly Friday nights, and then we also at the Iwo Jima Memorial on Tuesdays we did it, and then a lot of burial services. In Arlington, we would do burial details. And yeah, that was the job.
Interesting stuff. It must have been fascinating. You were there under Bush 43, and
That's right.
gosh, 9/11 going on, and I imagine there were some interesting dignitaries that came to visit
It
too.
it was busy. It was busy.
When you go into you've been to boot camp and indoctrinated as a Marine, but there must be some kind of uh, school to be an honor. Is there an honor guard school? Or are they conducted there at the Marine Corps barracks in DC? What's the?
So it's not a formal school, but it's all you do, right? So as soon as you get assigned to the duty station, you spend a tremendous amount of time training, right? I mean, you'd be surprised how long you have to spend learning how to stand still. It's
Yeah.
it's you it doesn't come naturally. But yeah, you spent a lot of time, a lot of rifle training. We drilled with the M1 rifles, and so just constant rifle drill, and 6, 7, 8 hours a day drilling,
There's your
learning.
job. Yeah.
That's it. That's all you do.
Is there? I'm just curious. Is there any inter-branch rivalries between the honor guards,
Of course,
the
of course.
Navy and the Marine, the
Yes,
Army,
yes,
all that?
of course, of course. Yeah, as you can imagine, and we as Marines were probably the most vocal about that rivalry, and
Well, when you're holding the high ground like you pretend to do, you got to defend it. Okay, I get it.
yes, yes,
Hey, you've been a computer guy now. This is
yeah,
NetSpeak. We're going to talk about NetSpeak, but it's not your first rodeo. You
that's
had a
right.
previous company. Let's talk a little bit about your history, how you got into this industry, and the previous company. And then I want to drill down on NetSpeak because I think what you're doing is really kind of neat.
Yeah. So our first company was actually a family business, and my father and I started that business in 2007. So just as my timing of going into the military in the summer of 2001 wasn't the best, starting a company in the summer of 2007, right before the economic collapse, was similarly not the best timing. But we
I got to back up for a second. I forgot to ask, but you went to Afghanistan
yes.
in a pretty hot time to be a Marine in Afghanistan, I would think.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't pleasant. I was with Third Marines at the time, so after I left Eighth and I went out and I did some training with 2-3, and then went over to 3-3 for a deployment, and that was 2004 to 2005. At the time, we were the only, as crazy as it sounds, because most of the op tempo was focused on the invasion of Iraq. So we were the only Marine infantry battalion in the entire country. So we got
Everybody
split
else
up.
was in Iraq fighting
Everyone, yeah. So
Ramadi and everything on.
there was probably 500, infantry Marines in Afghanistan, and we were in Kunar province, and we just got kind of split up into small teams. We operated in the same areas as our kind of brothers in the army, a lot of Rangers. We worked with a lot of the ODA teams there, and I was Jalalabad and Asadabad and Korangal Valley. I actually left Korangal like 3 weeks before Operation Red Wings happened. So
Oh, goodness,
yeah, so we were involved in some of the planning and staging in that same AO.
got some friends there's a guy, Navy SEAL named John McCaskill, who was very involved in that. So
So
yeah.
yeah, kind of same time, same place. Not somewhere you would want to take a vacation, that's for sure. But
All right. Well, I
formative.
digress, but back to the
Yeah,
family business. I had
yeah,
forgotten to I got so wrapped up in thinking about parades and flipping rifles around that I forgot to ask.
Two very different experiences in the
I would
military.
say so. Yeah.
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 So, yeah. So I got in the military in the summer of 2005. I think like most people, kind of took a little time to figure out what that all was and what's next. And was fortunate to be able to help start a company in 2007. It was in some ways an extension of the work that my father had done previously. But we really started from scratch, bootstrapped, kitchen counter, kind of story.
Right.
And
Is Dad an entrepreneur or?
yep, absolutely. Did a this well, the MediaView was the company. His previous company, he had started doing monitor repair, CRT repair, um, and started that in, I want to say right around 1990, 89, 90, 91, that time frame. And, went from dropping off and picking up in the back of his trunk CRT monitors to, repair with his technician. And at the peak, they were doing all the contracts for Dell and Sony, and they were
Mm,
repairing, a couple thousand a day.
mm,
So he had done that. By virtue of that, he got into the industry that we started our next company, or, MediaView, my first company with him. And that was what has now become ubiquitous, what's called the digital signage industry. So, rewind 20 years where a lot of static displays were being replaced with digital displays and, flat panel screens and attaching computers to them. And what is now ubiquitous, right? Every place you go has some sort of screen with information on it, whether it's, you're ordering coffee at your Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks, or moving around the airport, or walking into any university, or a corporate campus. I mean, it's full of what's called digital signage. But we got in on the early days of that industry. We built basically a small embedded computer that could connect to those displays and play video content 24 hours a day without breaking. And as simple as that might be now, it wasn't 20 years ago. So that was how I got into this industry. We very quickly built that company to include a lot of software for, remotely managing all of those. So it wasn't one or two, it was 1 or 2 thousand, right? So for an enterprise that wanted to deploy, I'm a Dunkin' Donuts of the world, right? I've got thousands of stores and I've got to put screens in all of them. So I want to standardize on
up
something.
where you are, there's a Dunkin' Donuts on every corner.
Well, there's one in every corner, yeah.
God, New
um,
England. Jeez.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a very regional reference, um, yeah, so that company evolved quite a bit to where it became this kind of embedded hardware software solution for these types of kind of enterprise deployments. And we spent a lot of time working in that company. I was in and out of it a little bit. We worked together for about 10 years, and then maybe 12, and then I kind of went off to do some other things. And then a few years ago was brought back. Unfortunately, he got sick very quickly and succumbed to that within a brief period of time. I was brought back in to take over the business, and we decided, it was in those days in the past couple of years where we started to kind of think about what has now become NetSpeak, and we decided along the way it was time to exit that business. We sold off the assets for that company, started NetSpeak, and have spent the past year starting from scratch, and building up what we think is going to be uh, a real problem solver within the broader pro AV industry, which is what the signage industry is a subset of.
Two questions come to mind about the company you started with your dad. Uh, you had some, I mean, how did you come up with the vision? I mean, it sounds like today that repairing CRTs is,
Right.
but how did you recognize that there was a market for that back when there wasn't really a market for that? I guess is the question.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly have to give Dave, my father, the credit for that. he was repairing CRTs. He had service contracts with all the major vendors, and people were hooking up computers to screens for early digital signage deployments. And he already had the service contract for the display, so he was given the service contract for the computers as well. And
It kind of walked up and showed itself to him, and he was wise enough to recognize the future.
He was wise enough. He was wise enough to recognize it, and you know, the failure rate of those devices was, by today's standard, just unreasonable. It was, 20, 30, 40, 50%, just because, I mean, I won't get into technical reasons, but they just weren't built for purpose.
Right. For that purpose. Here's the second question, the follow-up question. You went kind of from being a Marine, knuckle dragger, to going into business. You think that experience in the Marine Corps helped you in the early days of, being an entrepreneur?
It does. It's actually something I really, because I'm a bit of a masochist, so I'm doing it again now. But
yes, okay.
Which I think is a trait of every entrepreneur. But it's actually something I think about a lot. And absolutely, it's not as if there weren't particular technical skills or anything that really carried over, but more foundational skills. And if I had to pick one, I think it's endurance. And I would put a close second and third is really understanding the objective, understanding the broader mission, relying on team and having a trust in that team to go and accomplish that objective, and being able to endure everything that will come certainly along the way. And I truly believe that endurance is probably the single most necessary trait for a founder, for an entrepreneur, because every day you get beat down, and you have to wake up the next day feeling like you can still accomplish the objective and motivating others to believe in it as well. And you just have to be able to take the pain. And that's something you get very used to as a young Marine infantryman. So, being able to rely on that.
I cannot recall who said this, but I went to an event one time, and the speaker extolled the virtues of Marines becoming entrepreneurs. And he said it was for two reasons. One is you guys are tough as nails. And the second thing is that you're too stupid to know when it's time to quit.
Yep, that about sums it up.
I wish I could remember who made the quote. I'm going to give credit to them, but I just can't remember who said it, but I remember what they said. So
Yep. You have to be a bit dense to
Well, let's talk about Lena, which is language enabled network administrator, and this is a new product that you're rolling out with NetSpeak here on January the 21st. Is going to be, I guess, commercially available, rolling it out. You've told me what it's all about. I think it's really interesting, but tell everybody what Lena can do.
Yeah, that's really exciting. It's been a lot of work, and we're down to the final days here, where we're publicly launching here on the 21st. That's actually exactly 2 weeks ahead of our industry's largest trade show, which we'll be exhibiting at in Barcelona in the 1st of February. So we're all like in cages doing circles, just ready to launch, and the whole team feels it because we're just really excited. So just as kind of we were talking about the genesis of the previous company, MediaView, the genesis of NetSpeak is similarly responding to a really present and demanding industry need and problem. In the Pro AV ecosystem, which is really comprised of all the technologies that are in offices and classrooms. We're on a Zoom call right now. It's a collaboration platform that's absolutely within the Pro AV ecosystem. So it's your displays and microphones and cameras and room control systems and projectors and platforms like Zoom, Teams, and everything that we use to kind of collaborate and communicate in, corporate and industry and in education. You can think of that. That's basically a snapshot. That's what we call Pro AV. And the problem is that there's just way too many technologies from way too many vendors. There's no kind of universal solutions. So if I'm a large enterprise that has thousands of rooms, which many do, I have this mixed state of equipment, office to office, floor to floor, room to room, depending on what it's doing. So I might have a couple dozen vendors with even a couple dozen more technologies, and getting it all working and maintaining it all is very challenging when you have that kind of diverse ecosystem. So that was the challenge that the industry faces now. And that's the challenge as a vendor in my previous company. So I was one of those vendors. And that's what my customers were telling me. They said, okay, well, your stuff is fine in isolation. It's not a problem. But the problem is I've got a dozen vendors and I've got a piece of software to manage each of them. And it's just collectively unmanageable. So we started to, it doesn't take, you don't have to be a genius if you talk to 10 customers and 9 of them spell it out for you and say, this is my problem, right, to say, hey, we should probably put some effort into solving that problem. So we did, and it's a very hard problem to solve. Well, rather than kind of reinvent the wheel, we took a pretty, there was a confluence of us kind of working on that problem to solve a known issue in the industry, and then the real kind of introduction of generative AI. And I remember we were working on this problem and kind of had a moment where a bunch of light bulbs went off and realized we can do this, we can approach this very differently. And instead of trying to build this universal monitoring platform, why don't we build an intelligence that we can embed into these networks and leverage a lot of the existing tools that are there, but have this kind of all-seeing, all-knowing. So if you think about a network, I've got all these different things that are talking on a network and communicating in some way, but they're all kind of independent entities. And what we did is take the approach of, let's put like a central nervous system into that network that can communicate with all of those different technologies, that has an intelligence to kind of observe what they're doing, that knows what they're supposed to be doing, can see when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and has the ability to kind of logically observe and rationalize all that, and then assist people in kind of distilling all of the complexity that exists in that, and bringing it down to a level that makes it a lot simpler for people to kind of assimilate and leverage and use to make decisions, but then also to build automation where Lena, as an entity, can take those observations and take that knowledge and actually make decisions on her own on how to maintain the health and status of the network. So I can give you an example, maybe, and that might be, some of the ways we're applying the technology. Imagine deploying a person. We've built Lena to really mimic human workflows. So I'm a person, right? I'm a network operator. I have some stuff that I've installed, and I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm making sure that it's working. People in spaces are reporting when it's not. Hey, my Zoom call is not working. Okay, I'm gonna have a support ticket for that. We're gonna dispatch a person. We're gonna, fiddle with the technology to see if we can get it up and running. Okay, it was logged out, or it was on mute, or something like that, right? I mean, these are just day-to-day things that even in this we encounter, right? How many times have you sat down?
You're using artificial intelligence to make life easier for the everyday man who's got to integrate a Zoom call in with PowerPoint presentation and other things that are going on, which can often be the thing that slows down a meeting to begin with. I mean, is that literally? Am I stating this accurately?
That is most certainly part of the value proposition.
Is there a machine learning or artificial intelligence action here that that kind of learns and records what I did last time and remembers that so that I can do it, repeat it, lather, rinse, and repeat, please.
Absolutely. So Lena, when Lena gets deployed into an enterprise, Lena has instant access to every support ticket that's ever been, anything that any human's ever done and recorded from a support perspective, has institutional knowledge, encyclopedic knowledge of every technical manual or technical document for every device that's on the network, has the ability to sit and look at every single device 24/7, 365 to make sure it's doing what it's not supposed to, or making sure it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And we've leveraged generative AI not only to just generate information for human consumption, but Lena's able to also generate commands and talk to all of the devices on the network. So if something needs to be relogged in or taken off of mute or rebooted or something even far more complex, Lena can identify that and say, okay, well, I'm going to tell that thing, that display to go off of mute, or I'm going to turn that video bar on or log back in that Zoom account. So Lena can generate just both the information for people. Lena's multilingual, can speak, English, Spanish, and Portuguese and French, but then can also speak Samsung and Polycom and Logitech and Crestron and all these major brands in the industry.
So let's talk about the entrepreneurial journey here a little bit. You're trying to create a customer experience, and how did you know when you had sort of product market fit? You had gone out and talked to a lot of customers because of your previous business,
yeah,
and you sort of knew what their problems were. How'd you go through that process of finding the product market fit? When did you know you had that?
Well, I would say we went about that, as you said, in a bit of an atypical way because we had some of that knowledge, from our previous work, right? Everyone knows about the problem that I was describing earlier, just the troubles managing all of this type of stuff, because everyone deals with it. And there's almost people put up with it because it's such a hard problem to solve. Nobody was really aware of a good solution, right? There really weren't any good solutions on the market. So it was this large part of it, luck, kind of looking at that problem, trying to figure out that problem, and then having this kind of new technology become more mainstream and just be in the right place at the right time, thinking about it the right way to determine, okay, this is how we can solve this in a new way. And so what we've done is we've built that, and now we're certainly launching formally now. But along the way, we've built it out while talking with that same customer base and while engaging
Have
with
your
that
customers
customer
been
base.
helping you with some of the prototyping and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are very much customer and problem driven and oriented, right? So we have an idea. We've been engaged with design partners and beta customers for much of the duration of the development cycle over the past year, and just bouncing things off of them, testing things. It's a bit of a problem, and we kind of joke about it because we've built this entity, we've built this intelligence that can go into this, be vertically integrated into this industry and into this application, and has the ability to reason and observe and think and act and do all these things. So it's like, okay, well, what do you want it to do, right? So we've worked really closely with the people operating those networks to say, like, okay, how do we sculpt this and deploy it in a way that's actually solving your biggest pain points? So it's really how I lead. It's like, yeah, we're going to solve this problem, but let's triage this. Give me the top five.
Let me ask you a question. Is
10.
my interaction with it as a customer natural language? And am I speaking to the computer or am I typing in the request?
You can do both. You can do both. And typically what we see in user testing is a combination of both, right? You might have common requests that you can kind of cache and deliver just with a button or text, or you can just sit down and have a conversation with Lena about the network.
I guess once you repeat it, we're doing our weekly team Zoom call. Boom, it goes back and repeats, right? But
Yes,
you can get creative with it.
you can, and the real magic, and I think the real value, however, is not as much the human interaction, but it's the automation, right? So it's deploying Lena into the network, setting a set of parameters or objectives, and then letting Lena manage that network.
Let's talk about going to the market for a minute. We're getting now into the weeds a little bit, but did you select a particular niche in the market that you're rolling out with in a couple of weeks? I'm sure a lot of thought went into this.
Yes. We're really focused on the meeting room right now, and
Right.
so Pro AV is bigger than that, but we know that the kind of nature of work in offices have changed. There's more technology in those spaces than there has been historically. There's more of an emphasis on hybrid work and spaces being less rigid and more adaptable for people, more flexibly moving around in office, out of office, collaborating with people in different locations. So we know that that's a reality. We know that there's a drive to bring people back into offices. We know that there is almost a zero tolerance level among, say, employees to walk into. You're bringing me back to my office, and I walk into a conference room to have my meeting, and it doesn't work. I mean, there's zero tolerance for that. So really just owning that and taking that conference room, that meeting room, and the technology that exists in it, and deploying Lena into that environment to make that frictionless environment, have it do what it's supposed to be doing all the time, have that, boost the productivity levels from the teams that are using those spaces, and decrease the operational burden from the teams that are kind of managing them. And that's really where we're focused on. But that's
meetings that don't suck, right?
Meetings that don't suck.
That's your tagline. I'll send you my marketing bill.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do that at the show. Meetings that don't suck. But it's our beachhead. It's our beachhead. It's not our end game, right? So we want to land and expand, and we're gonna do this really well with the expectation that it's only going to grow, and we're only going to start to bring in other technologies in different applications. And we've built the platform to be able to do that, but we're focused on solving this problem first.
Erik, it's NetSpeek, NetSpeek, all
right.
E's. And how do you want people to get in touch with you, and talk a little bit about where you'll be in Barcelona too? Just we'll do a little shout out for that as we wind down.
Sure, I should have had a booth number ready for me, but you can. We're going to be.
We can put links to all of this stuff in the show notes that we're going to be putting together for you. But go ahead and throw that stuff out.
Yeah, so we'll be showcasing in Barcelona, Spain, in the first week of February at Integrated Systems Europe, which is the largest international Pro AV trade show. And we're in the Innovation Corridor, which is in the center of the show. I forget the exact booth number, but you can reach out to anyone here. I'm Erik at NetSpeek. You can.
That's ERIK.
ERIK.
And we guys make creative use of verbs, nouns, and So yeah.
Well, yeah.
All these in NetSpeek.
Erik,
it's a trend here.
It didn't have any. It didn't have any copyright or trademarks, so it wasn't the first choice, but it was a lot easier for us to use. And so and you can even contact Lena directly, Lena Lena at NetSpeek as well, and that we're doubling that as our sales email. So and
we're going to put links to all of these things and into the show notes. Erik, I want to go back. I think I may bring you back for another episode, and we're We're just going to spend the whole time talking about funny stories that went on working for the president at the White House. There's probably a plethora of humorous things that you could share, but that'll be for
Yeah,
another day.
it
Thanks so
was.
much, Erik, for appearing on the Mission Oriented podcast. I'll throw out an Army Bravo Zulu to you for your performance today. Folks, you can get in touch with Erik and NetSpeek, and we're going to wish you the best of luck here with your launch here on January the 21st, 2025. Erik, thanks so much for being on the program.
I much appreciate it, Bob. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Mission Oriented. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and you won't miss an episode. To learn more about Mission Oriented and the Veteran Crowd Network, visit us at www.veterancrowdnetwork.com.